Florida State game was certainly, if you wanted to call any one of them a smack in the face, that was the one. And, you know, I saw it coming a little bit. I saw it coming for sure that Florida State was going to be breathing fire. They just had some. It reminded me a little bit of us playing Butler last year. They had some major motivational factors, and they had a really good team. You know, it's one thing to be motivated; it's another thing to be motivated and good. I thought, you know, to answer your question, our guys responded pretty well from that in terms of hanging in there and trying to do what we asked them to do. We didn't offensively play very efficiently the whole tournament. We didn't shoot the ball particularly well, but I don't really blame players. I never blame players for that. I mean, there's some times where you haven't shot the ball well, and there's other times where you get going. Somebody asked me down there, are you guys a good shooting team? Is this an anomaly? I think we'll be a good shooting team. We weren't down. But you know, Florida State certainly had something to do with that in the first game. And we got a lot of, well, all three games. We went back and watched the offense from Florida State. I mean, we got great looks, but you got to knock them down.
Did that format, 3 days, 3 games in 3 days, the way you guys play 94 feet, that kind of makes it more challenging for you than most, doesn't it?
It can work both ways. It really can. You know, I think it's a very fragile thing in that it can really work in your favor. You know, if a few things don't go your way, it can work against you. You know, for instance, Jordan Burgess went down in the first game. You know, he potentially could have made a big difference in the second and third game. So that all of a sudden affects your depth. We went from being a team that I think coming into the tournament had a lot of depth to, by the Georgetown game, you know, we were playing a lot less guys. So that obviously factors in when you're playing 3 games in 4 days. But I think it can go either way.
Rob called it a reality check. What's the reality check from your standpoint kind of going forward? Like, how do you...
You know, I think some of you guys had astutely pointed out that we never really had been ranked coming into the season, and how was that going to affect the psyche of the guys? And we talked about it a lot. It was something that was a huge point of emphasis. I think our guys did a great job in the Virginia game of still taking an underdog mentality. And, you know, it's funny, I told the guys, I think they were Virginia at the time was either 24th or 25th. If they're a couple notches down and not in the top 25, then can we still take that underdog mentality? It's tricky with teams because they see so much what's out there media-wise and Twitter and that kind of stuff. But the reality is, I think what Rob was talking about was some of our guys felt like we were better than we are. We've been a team every year. I think I would say this is the case for most teams. We have to get better as the year goes on. We have to learn how to do the things we do. With our style of play, offensively and defensively, we try to do a lot of different things. I mean, if I spelled out for you all of our presses, all of our defenses, all of our offenses, it's a lot. So when you do a lot, you're not going to be great at everything early in the year, and it's going to take time for you to get better, and especially when you have 9 new players like we do. We have had such a gap between our returning players, guys that played here, and then the new guys. And so we're trying to narrow that gap, and I think this tournament was good for that because it showed some of the progress that needs to be made.
Will it be easier going forward now to have fight instead of to think they earned it and not prove it maybe?
Yes, it should be. If it's not, then that would be a major problem. But, you know, this has been the case at every school I've been at. It was a case when we lost to Western Michigan my first year, and it was as a head coach, my first loss, and I remember being so distraught and upset by that. And I remember someone texting me and saying that loss was the best thing for you for that Oklahoma game. And I remember thinking, you're full of it. But it actually was. I mean, we had, I'll never forget, an unbelievable next practice after that. And the level of focus. Larry Sanders was just, he's just a different person. If we would have won at Western Michigan, would we have played as well in Oklahoma? You'd love to think as a coach, yeah, we should. I mean, you should be motivated the same way. But, these are 18, 22-year-old student athletes we're working with, and human nature comes into play.
Along those same lines, what have you seen out of the upperclassmen, Rob and Devontae, in terms of responding to this and talking to the young guys about this little?
Well, I've been pleased with the response, but we have not practiced yet because we had to take yesterday off according to the NCAA rules. But there's been quite a bit of conversation amongst players, amongst coaches and players, and particularly with Rob, Javonte, Briante, and Trey. To me, those are the four guys at the core of everything we do. And those are four guys that to their credit, those guys have stepped up and said, we need to be better. And not just in terms of being better offensive or defensive players, but in terms of leadership and in terms of creating the type of identity that we want to have.
What do you want to see in the first practice?
I'm not worried about the first practice. Today's practice will be it will be extremely spirited, and there will be some major work done today and improvement made. I can almost guarantee that. But then where do you go from there? That's the question. And I think for us, a couple of people, when you go through tough times in coaching, you find out who your real friends are. And a lot of people reached out to me and said, keep doing what you guys are doing. You're going to be fine. Keep getting better. And then a couple people said, man, I looked at your schedule. It's a bear, But we put this schedule together, to challenge our team. And so we've got some really good teams coming up, and it'll be a good challenge for us. So you just got to – today's practice will be at a high level, but then that doesn't mean anything if we don't back it up moving forward this week.
Coach, you mentioned one of the advantages of this tournament is live scouting of your opponents, and you got a chance to see what Easter down there for the game, this week. What impressed you about them when you saw them live there?
To be honest, I didn't watch them much at all because they were on the other side of the bracket, and the first day they won and we lost. So Mike Rhodes has a scout. He watched them every day. I've watched them on tape since we got back. I've been impressed with I've always been impressed with Bill Cohen, first and foremost. I think he's one of the best coaches around. I don't know why he doesn't get more attention. He's terrific. He's always done a great job with his team. Going back to my first year here when they beat us twice. Yeah, they beat us here and they beat us up there. But as a team, they've got really good length. Quincy Ford is their best player, and he's only played 2 games for them. But I don't know what his status is, but there's probably a good chance he'll play against us. So they did what they did down there, beat Georgetown, came within a basket of beating Florida State without their best player. That's obviously impressive. They have 2 bigs, Spencer and Etherton, that are just high motor, hard playing, both very, very capable of a double-double any night. So those are guys that we're going to have to really account for.
Who's about the flex that makes that comfort?
They don't do it as much as they used to, but I'm sure we will see it some. That's going back to Boston College and Al Skinner. They've always been good at it. But he's kind of gotten into some other things more of late. He's a really good coach, and he does a terrific job using his personnel. When he had great guards with Matt Janning and Chasen Allen, and then more recently he had Lee and Smith. The kid Smith came in here and didn't miss a shot. He was like 8 for 8. He's done great things for the guards. Now he has some size and guys that are rugged and very good players on the interior, but also can go outside and face the basket. So he's done a nice job utilizing them.
It sounds like one of the big lessons the guys might have learned was when the leadership void, Darius and Marshall left,
Yeah.
and how they have to kind of step up. And one of them has to force themselves maybe to be that guy.
Well, it's something that we knew, and it's something that we knew was going to take time. I think, a big emphasis this week for us is appreciation. It's one of our core values, but we're talking about it more than ever this week, and this happens to be Thanksgiving week. But Rob said to me last night, because, Rob said to me, you never fully appreciate something until it's gone. And, that's kind of a cliche, but I could tell as he was saying it, the sincerity in his voice. And he wasn't talking about Darius, but that applies, very, very much to D. I mean, he just, what he did was so much more than his stats added up together. But we knew that then, and I think it's been this tournament's been a reminder of that. Those 4 guys that I mentioned understand that they need to step up from a leadership standpoint. And I don't necessarily expect any one of them to be exactly what Darius was, but I think between the 4 of them, they can provide good leadership for this team, and they need to do better with that. They know that.
Does having that charge to kind of accept that role, does that make it easier to kind of disassociate yourself from how you're playing and how it affects you you could be 1 for 11, but you still have to lead.
Depends on your makeup as a person. Darius had the perfect makeup for that. He was unselfish. So when we said Darius equals the team, that was simple for him. He was able to attach himself to that identity without making himself bigger than any of his teammates. He actually, in a lot of ways, sacrificed his own game, especially last year, for his teammates. So those other 4, they don't have that natural makeup, but I do think they've learned. Leaders emerge and they develop. It's very difficult as a freshman or a sophomore to come in and do that. Darius really didn't show it much his first 2 years. So the thing I'm excited about is now with him being gone, those guys have the opportunity to step up. I think actually the 2 juniors are more personality-wise outgoing, but the 3 seniors, and particularly Rob and Javante, they've been around the longest. They've been to 3 NCAA tournaments. They've been to a Final Four. They need to utilize the wisdom that they have, and I think they want to. They just got to go out and do it.
Can you use this adversity to sort of shape?
Accept in victory what you wouldn't accept in defeat, but at the same time, there's nothing like a loss or a tough tournament to give players a renewed sense of urgency. So that's why I can say today's practice will be, one of the best, and it's, hopefully something that will be a reminder for these guys for a long time.
Coach, with the foul situation, you said you talked to other coaches. This is not just VCU, but all coaches talking about how fouls are called. Have you talked to other coaches about observations they've made, and then when you're relaying it to the team, something you find teaching better on the floor, or is it something that's better than based on study?
Both. I mean, it's still a work in progress, Wes, and to be honest with you, the biggest challenge is you really have to adjust in the moment to the officiating at that time. And I'm not even going to say in that game, because it can change within the game. It did change in the Georgetown game. Just look at the fouls that were called in the first half, the number of fouls or number of free throws. And I'm not saying for one team or the other team. And then look at the fouls and the free throws in the second half. When we came out of halftime, I think we had turned them over 14 times, and it felt like the first few minutes of the second half, there had maybe been a determination it's going to be called tighter, in the press. Which, if it is, it is. Then we have to adjust. But the thing you cannot do, and I think this is where we have to get better, is you can't just say, okay, I'm not going to foul, I'm just going to back up, because then teams go score. So that's just as bad as fouling, if not worse. So that's something that, a guy like Javonte Reddick, he's not there yet. He needs to learn how to continue to be aggressive without fouling. It's a fine line.
Coach, to piggyback on that, how challenging is that, I guess for you as a coach to kind of adjust that maybe minute by minute during the course of a game, and they're calling it one way early and changing it up as it goes along?
You just have to try to get a feel for it. I try to communicate with the officials, to see if they can let me know, where things are going to be at, or what they're really looking for at that time. But it's a challenge. At the same time, that's my job, and it's my job and the player's job to adjust and to find out how best we can play within our style of play without fouling too much, without getting guys in foul trouble. Because I know this, we want our best players on the floor the majority of the time, especially those four guys I mentioned. I mean, they need to be on the floor as much as possible. And we've had a few games already this year where we haven't been able to play them as much as we need to.
Can referees allow you to have a more spirited conversation this year? I mean, do they give you any more leeway?
No, it depends on the official. They're all really different. I mean, some of them are very talkative and very responsive. And there's other guys, I guess in the NBA, refs don't really talk to coaches or players. They just kind of go about their job. And there's some guys that take more of that approach. A couple of them were actually trained in the NBA or started in the NBA, and then other guys, maybe that's just more comfortable for them. So it just depends on the crew you have. But that's the other thing that's a challenge, is you have different officials every night, and sometimes you're playing and the officials are assigned by this league, sometimes they're assigned by that league. So the good thing, at least when you get into league play, is they're all A-10 officials, so there maybe is a little bit more uniformity in terms of the way they've been told to officiate the game.
You get a chance to, in the NFL, they'll meet with the coaches ahead of time and say, watch for this play, this guy may be able to. Do you guys get any?
That would be great. No, we don't do that. The only interaction really is at about 12 minutes, Rob and Trey go out, to the captain's circle, but that's more surface. I mean, there's not really much done there in terms of points of emphasis.
Coach, can you talk a little bit about what have you seen out of Marley Cox so far? He's carved out about a decent spot in rotation.
Yeah, I think Mo's coming. He's making progress. He's come a long way in the last year. I mean, we keep reminding ourselves he's just a freshman. He didn't even get to practice last year. I think he's played with a better and better energy. He still has a long way to go, but he's helped our team. Long arms, block shots. His inexperience showed a little bit against Josh Smith, but Josh Smith's a big-time player. I mean, he's a load. But I think that Mo has a bright future. I like having him out there. The guys like having him out there. He's very well liked by his teammates. His offensive game, is developing, and I think it'll continue to do so. What we need from him is when he gets on the floor to rebound at a high level, defend, and block shots.
It looks like Javonte was kind of limited by foul trouble. The 2 games where he didn't really do a ton. But it looks like Terrence had 3 games where he didn't do much. Is he having a hard time adjusting to the defense, or what's the deal?
No, it's just a matter of focus and aggressiveness for him. He'll be better. It's just going to take some time for him. He's still kind of feeling his way out. I think it was a real challenge for him playing his former team. That is tough mentally. He wanted to win so bad, obviously, but he's still very, very friendly with a lot of those players. So I think that was a challenge and certainly understandable. But we need him to be better. We need Javonte to be better. Javonte is a guy that I've really challenged since our last game, and I think he's capable of much more. So now he's got to go show it.
Coach, you mentioned to Tim Burrell in an article that there were something like 2 dozen defensive things you guys need to work on. What are some of the key things that you guys got to fix?
Yeah, there's at least that. There's so many details on the defensive end, and we work on a lot of them over the course of a practice, but it's challenging to emphasize 2 dozen things because it kind of gets watered down. But there's a lot of areas we need to get better. I would say, just to give you 4 or 5, one-on-one defense, staying in front of our man, particularly with our perimeter players. In the Georgetown game, Smith, Rivera, and Starks had 49 points between them. And they're good players. I mean, those guys are all Big East level players, but that's just too many. And they had some critical baskets down the stretch where we didn't do a good enough job staying in front. For Briante, he's got great quickness and he's a very good defender. I think he's done a better job this year of being disciplined and staying in front, but in that Georgetown game, he took a step back. Again, a lot of it had to do with the opposition. Similarly, on drives, we have a concept that we call show and go, which is giving help to a teammate when his man gets a step on him. And we were much better at that earlier in the year than we were in Puerto Rico. So we've got to get back to emphasizing that. Let's see, what else? Like I said, Josh Smith, scored too much on us in the post. He does that to a lot of people, but we've got to keep guys from getting the ball on the low block. That'll be a point of emphasis against Northeastern. They've got really good bigs. And, in addition to that, I think just staying on edge on the defensive end. I think there was quite a few possessions down in Puerto Rico where we were good for 25 seconds, 30 seconds, but we didn't finish the possession. And that's because at times we relaxed or we let up. So just staying on edge and understanding it's not over until it's all the way over. And that's something that we'll keep working on.
And is opposing field goal percentage, is that sort of a deceiving stat against you guys? Because your system, they're going to have less possession because you turn them over 28% of the time, and that number is going to be a little inflated against you guys?
Yes, it always is. I mean, because they're getting less shots. But at the same time, we can't let the other team shoot 11 for 15 in the second half like Georgetown did. That's too high. Actually, 11 field goal attempts is not too many to give up in a half because, with threes, maybe that's 25 points. But when you combine that with 30 free throws, now it's 55. And so we have to do the combination of holding teams to a lower percentage, turning them over at a high rate, which we've done a pretty good job of, but then keeping them off the line. One of those, if we're not great at one of those areas, we can still win the game and still be effective. But if 2 out of 3 or 3 out of 3 are not good, then that's when it gets you in trouble and you give up a big number and a half. So that's an area where we got to get better.
Looking at a bright side thing, and I know Long Beach isn't a great team, but there's been a lot of times when you guys would have had trouble winning a game when you only turned over the other team 10 times. Is that a positive?
Yeah, it's just kind of funny how the stats turned out, and that the games where we turned the other team over, we came up short, and then the game in the middle where we didn't, we won. I think Long Beach is pretty good, actually. I think they're going to win some games, a lot of games in their league, maybe even win their league. They had 2 players that I thought were terrific, the kid Jennings and their starting point guard. But, I think we played better half-court defense in that game. It was certainly something that was on the front of our guys' mind when we realized that, hey, they're doing a pretty good job taking care of the ball. So the good thing is, early in the year, very few teams are putting together great 40-minute efforts. And there may be a game where you press well, but you don't do this well, or you shoot well, but you don't pass well. As we go, we have to put all those things together, and that's the challenge that's out there in front of us now. Historically, this is a time of year we've done a really good job getting better, and it starts in practice and then extends to the game.